Hello everyone, I am Vibha Chauhan and welcome to Gen Classes Funda Clear. So today I will explain Class 8 Geography Chapter 2 and our chapter is Land, Soil, Water, Natural Vegetation and Wildlife Resources. So in this chapter we will discuss about different types of resources, like we will discuss about land, its use, its conservation, we will discuss about water, problems related to water. We will discuss all these resources in this chapter, about natural vegetation, about our wildlife resources. So as you know, this whole book, Class 8 Geography book, is considered on resources. So in this chapter we will discuss some of the resources, about their conservation, about their problems. So our first topic is land. So first we shall discuss land. As you know, land covers only 30% of Earth's surface, and even in those 30% there is a very small area that is populated, that is habitated. That means that is suitable for living of people. You know that the 30% of land that is Earth's surface, only 30% is habitable. 90% of the whole population of the world lives only on the 30% of the land. So the remaining 70% is sparsely populated or uninhabited. This is because of topography, because of soil, because of the land. The qualities of land differ from place to place, and because of that there is uneven distribution of population all over the world. So land that is one of the resources, and it covers only 30% of Earth's surface. And the soil, the land, the qualities of land differs from place to place. It is because of topography, because of soil. You know that people live only in those areas that are suitable for agriculture, that are arable, that are plains, river valleys, that are suitable for living. But areas that are desert areas, very snowy areas, where there is frost, mosses, where people don't live, so those areas are sparsely populated or uninhabited. So next topic is land use. So as you know that we use land for different purposes. You know that we use for forestry, we use for mining, we build roads, build houses that you live in, we build complexes, industries, factories. So these all we use land, and that is termed as land use. We call it land use because you're using for some purpose. You know that land is used for many purposes, so that is called as land use. And there is growing population. As you know that in the world there is growing population, and because of that their demands are also growing. And you know that land is sufficient, land is limited, it cannot be extended. So the growing population and the growing demands are harming our land resource. You know that because of land use. You know that in urban areas there are setting more and more complexes, more and more industries, factories, and in rural areas the people are using land because of many purposes, like for agriculture, like for many purposes. So in both urban areas as well as rural areas the demands are growing. Because of the population is growing, so the demands are also growing, and because of that we are increasing land use. And land can be divided in two more groups, that is private property, private land, and common resource property, that is also community property. Common resource property is also called as community property. So private property, that is owned by some particular person, that is a private. That means if one person is holding is owning it, that is for his own purpose. And community property, as you know that park, playgrounds, these are community property or community resource properties, because these are owned by a community. As you know that in countries many places are owned by government, so those are also community properties. So land can be divided in both private properties as well as community properties. And you know that the demands of people are ever increasing, and this is because that is why the community properties are decreasing and private properties are increasing. So next topic is conservation of land resource. So as you know that there is limited land and unlimited demands of the growing population. So you know that we are harming this natural resource, the land. We are harming it. So we have to adopt methods. We have to conserve this natural resource. Otherwise it will become extinct because of the unlimited demands. Unlimited demands are ever growing. Since you can say from the history it has been growing. So we have to conserve our natural resources, and to conserve it there are many methods like afforestation. Afforestation is one of the most important method to conserve this natural resource. So in afforestation means you have to plant, you have to make plants, more and more trees, plants, you have to plant them, and because of plants and trees, because of the roots of plants and trees, the roots of those plants and trees will bind those particles of land, and because of that there would not be any land degradation, because you know that we are harming it and there has been always land degradation. So to stop land degradation, you can plant more and more trees, and because of the roots of trees, they will bind the particles of land. You know that the roots of plants and trees always play a very important role to bind the land particles, to prevent them from land degradation. So afforestation can be the one of the most important method. Next can be land reclamation. We have to reclaim that land, any land. And third, that we have to check overgrazing. You know that many people herd animals, and those animals graze from those lands, and if they overgraze, if they above the limit, if they graze above the limit, then there would be land degradation. So we have to check overgrazing of animals as well, and we have to check pesticides. We don't have to use so much pesticides, chemicals on land. You know that for agricultural purpose we use so much chemicals or pesticides on land. So we have to stop them to prevent land from land degradation. So we have to conserve this natural resource, otherwise it would be degraded. And one of the major threats is landslides. Landslides, as you know that in simple term you can define it as the mass movement of earth or debris or rocks down a slope. So as you know that in hilly areas, in mountains, if it is a mountain as a slope, and due to earthquake, due to floods, due to heavy rainfall, it is loosened. The particles of land is loosened, and because of that it will be loosened. So those particles, those rocks from those mountains will down a slope, will fall down on the roots, on any way down a slope, down that slope of that mountain. So that would be called as landslide. So landslide is usually caused due to earthquakes, due to volcanoes, due to floods, due to heavy rainfall, due to human factors as well. If there is intense blasting, then there can be landslide. And often landslide takes place in hilly areas, because in hilly areas, in mountain areas, you know that there is always a slope, and because of that slope the debris, the rocks, the earth gets down, it downs from that slope, and always landslide cause a very intense damage to people, to properties. You know that it would fall down on the road, or it can fall on the river, so it will block river, and then the water would also be blocked. Then how can we produce electricity? How can that water be used for those people that are living near that area? So often landslide cause a very intense damage and problems for people. And one of the case studies is given in your book, that is of that one of the major landslide hit the Pangi village near Rikong PU, in the Kinnaur district of Himachal Pradesh, and it caused very intense damage, and it was caused due to intense blast. You know that area is border area, so there was intense blasting, and because of that there was a landslide, and that landslide damaged the 200-meter stretch border of Hindustan-Tibet Road, National Highway 22. So that landslide caused a major problem, and because of that we had to vacate those people living near that mountain. So landslides are a major threat, and there have been mitigations for landslides. You know that today's technology is of so high level that we have mitigation measures, like you can locate those hazard areas that are prone to landslides. You can map them on the maps, you can locate them on maps, so the construction activities would be prevented by people, because they know that it is prone to landslide. So anytime there can be landslide, so they would not construct anything. Next can be retention wall. You can build retention wall, that it is a mountain, and near that mountain you have a built wall, and that wall would prevent from landslide because it will make it strong. And next it can be that you have to plant more and more trees, because you know that roots of those trees would bound the particles of that mountain. So there have been mitigations for landslides as well. So next topic is soil. So what is soil? What is meant by soil? So soil is a matter. Soil is an organic matter. Soil is a grainy substance above the land. It is linked to land. It is a part of land, not it is land. So there is difference between land and soil. People often are confused between land and soil. So soil is a grainy substance above the land, and it is made of organic matter. It is made of weathered rocks, organic matter and minerals, and this happens due to process of weathering. So in process of weathering means the breakup and decay of rocks due to frost action, due to human factors, due to topography, due to earthquake. This happens due to many factors. The soil is made of due to process of weathering. So next topic is factors of soil formation. Factors of soil formation. So the main factors for soil formation are the nature of parent rock and the nature of climatic factors. Now these are the major factors for soil formation. Apart from them, there are many other factors for the soil formation, such as topography, there are many for like the climate, like the time for the composition of soil. So there are many factors for the soil formation, and those are, so if we talk about parent rock, it determines the color, the texture, the chemical properties of soil. It also determines minerals, contents and permeability. So these are all the things that are determined by parent rock. Now if we talk about climate, it determines the temperature of soil, it determines the rainfall influence, rate of weathering and humus. Now if we talk about time, it is for the thickness of soil profile. Now as you know that if soil is very loosened, if it is very thin, then it means that it is a new composition of soil. It is made by very new process of weathering. But you know that sand, if we talk about sand, then it is also a type of soil, but it is very thick because it is a very historical sand. You can say that it is changed in that form due to time, because it has been there for a very long time. So that's why it is called as sand, not soil. It is a type of soil, that is sand. Now next is relief. Relief is for the altitude and slope accumulation of soil. Now next is flora, fauna and microorganisms that affect the rate of humus formation. So these are the major factors for the soil formation, or that make the soil, and these determines different things like the color, like the chemical properties, like the rainfall influence, like the thickness of soil formation. Like the thickness of soil or soil formation, you can say both. So these are all the major factors for the soil formation, how the soil particles are formed. Now our next topic is degradation of soil and conservation measures. degradation of soil and conservation measures. So as you know that both human factors as well as natural factors affect soil as a resource. As you know that soil is a natural resource, but both factors of human as well as nature is harming it. We are harming soil. So there are conservation measures for the conservation of soil. We have to conserve soil because you know that there is soil erosion and depletion of soil because of factors, many factors. There are many factors such as deforestation, overgrazing, overuse of pesticides or chemical, or you can say that there are many more factors like floods, like rain wash. So these all factors led to depletion of the soil or the soil erosion. So there are conservation measures for the soil, and those are, first is mulching. So mulching is also one of the methods to soil, to conserve the soil. And what we do in mulching is that the bare ground between plants is covered with a material like straw or any other material. So that is in mulching. We cover the bare grounds between plants with any material like soil, like straw. There are many materials. So that is mulching. Now the next method to conserve soil is contour barriers. Contour barriers, that is the second way to conserve our soil. Now in contour barriers, what we do is that we make barriers with stone, with grasses, with straws. We make barriers along with contours. Contours, as you know what they are, and we make barriers to cut off the runoff, that is rain wash. We cut off the rain wash through contour barriers, and along with barriers some people also do farming. So that is contour barriers. Now next method to conserve soil is rock dam. Rock dam, that is so popular among you. It can be also popular among you. So rock dam, in rock dam what we do is that we pile up rocks, one above one, one above one. We do it like that. We pile up rocks to make a figure like a dam, and then we slow down the rain wash. You know that if there are so much rain, if there are so much rocks, if there is rock dam, then the flow of water would be slowed down. So we make rock dam. People make rock dams to conserve soil. That is also one of the methods for the conservation of soil. Now next method is terrace farming. Terrace farming, that is also one of the common method to conserve soil. So in terrace farming what people do is that they do farming along with the hill slopes, so that the slow down of water would be on their crops. So they do farming along with the hills, slopes of hills. So that is what is called as terrace farming. Now next is intercropping. Intercropping. So intercropping, what people do in intercropping method is that they grow crops alternately. That is, they grow crops in a particular season so that there would not be any rain wash of soil. For example, if they are growing some particular crop in particular season, now they would growing it till many months, and after that they would grow any other crop. They would not grow so many crops at same time. They would grow crops only one crop at one time. So that is what is intercropping, to slow down the rain wash so that there would not be any soil erosion. Now next is contour plugging. Contour plugging, that is that in contour plugging what people do is that they plug farms along with parallel to the contours of hills, mountains. So they do farming or plugging along parallel to the contours, so that for the water, so that the soil would not be washed by rainwater or any other water or by the river water, by the slope of that mountain. So they do farming parallel to the contours of mountains. Now next is and last is shelter belts. Shelter belts, that is given the last method to conserve soils, but after that there are still many more methods to conserve soil. Now in shelter belts what is done is that in coastal areas or in dry areas, in dry regions, you know that you might have seen very long trees in a rows. So many trees are planted in a rows to check the direction of wind, so that they would be prevented, the soil would be prevented from soil erosion, because of the trees. They, you know that trees are helping in everywhere for the conservation of land as well as for the conservation of soil. So what we learned is that trees are the most important method to conserve, because of their roots. They would bind it. So these are all the conservation measures for the soil. We have to conserve soil, otherwise there will be depletion and soil erosion. So our next topic is water. Water, as everybody knows, it is a vital renewable resource. So water is a very important thing on the world, on Earth's surface. Now if we talk about water, 3/4 of the Earth's surface is covered with water, and the remaining 1/4 is part of land. Now 3/4, that is around 75%, that is the Earth's surface, total of Earth's surface, 3/4 is water. And on Earth there is only 2.7% fresh water, that is drinking water. It is because you know that it was in primitive oceans that the life began on Earth around 3.7 or 8 billion years back. Now you know that the life began on Earth around 3.7 or 8 billion years back, and it was also in the primitive oceans. But as you know that oceans and seas cover the most water part of the earth, and you also know that it is a saline water. The water in oceans is not drinkable, is not fit for human use, human consumptions. So that is why only 2.7% is fresh water on the earth. And even in that 2.7%, 70% is not accessible by humans. So as you know that much of the fresh water of the earth is on the glaciers, is in the form of glaciers, that is in Greenland or Antarctica or any other countries, that is in form of glaciers, snows, and are inaccessible for humans. So that is why only 1% of the fresh water is suitable, is accessible for humans. You know that only 1%. So you can say that how important water is for humans, and we must save it. We need to save it as much as we can. So water is a vital renewable resource. But as we know that the population is growing, but the amount of water cannot be grown. The amount of water is constant. It never grows or decreases. It never increases or decreases. So you know that the process of water cycle, in that process of water cycle, you know that there is rainwash, there is precipitation, there is evaporation, condensation. So in that process, you know that the water is just running through a cycle. First it is in water bodies, and then it evaporates, and then become clouds, and then happens the precipitation, and again comes back to the water bodies. So the water is just running throughout a cycle, and that is what we call water cycle. So the process, so the amount of water is constant, it can never be increased or decreased. But you know that due to urbanization and factories, the ever growing factories, industries, there is so much water pollution, that is polluting our water, and there is scarcity of water due to more and more growing factories and urbanization. And you know that it is surveyed that per human the consumption of water in urban areas is 135 liters. So as you can say that it is very much, and just people don't use water just for drinking or washing. They use it for many different purposes, like you know that electricity that comes to your house, it is also generated from water. And we know that in agriculture there is a very important role of water. So water is used for different purposes. It is not only for drinking or washing. There are so much purposes of water. So now next topic is problems of water availability. So problems of water availability. So problems related to water availability. So you know that in many parts of the world there is scarcity of water, and there are many reasons behind it. And the reasons where there is scarcity, where there is very less water, that are the southern part of America, the West Asia, South Asia, and the northwest part of Mexico, and there are many more parts where there is scarcity of water, and this is due to many reasons. So as you know that there is water pollution, people are polluting water. You know that in industries, in factories, the all wastages goes to water and they are untreated. So that is why the water is becoming more and more polluted, and that is why there is in many parts of the world there is water scarcity. You might be thinking that in your house there is water or there is no water. So it is because of us, it is because of nature factors, or it can be human factors. Most of the probably is human factors. So next topic is conservation of water resources. Conservation of water resources. So as we know that water is becoming more and more polluted. Humans are polluting it even more and more, ever growing. The population is growing. You know that population is growing, and due to it factories, industries are growing, and due to it water pollution is growing. So as you know that so much of the sewage, untreated sewage, garbages are thrown to water bodies, to rivers, to lakes, and because of that the water is getting polluted. You know that from the factories there are so much chemicals, pesticides, there are so much chemicals that are not biodegradable are thrown to water, and directly or indirectly they are consumed by us people. So that's why people are getting more and more diseases, because they don't get the fit drinkable water because of the water pollution. You know that there is water pollution because of because of humans, because of industries, because of factories that are ever growing. So we have to conserve water. You know that it's a renewable resource, but if we are polluting it, then it can become extinct. It can be on the verge of extinction. So we have to conserve it, and there are many ways to conserve it. One of the most important is rainwater harvesting. You might have also heard about it. Rainwater harvesting is to collect the rainwater. You know that there are many ways of rainwater harvesting as well. There are many types of rainwater harvesting, like of the rooftop, like the underground. So you can say that rainwater harvesting is one of the most important. Many people are now doing rainwater harvesting. They are collecting the rainwater, because you know that the rainwater is the most important source of water. It is because of the rain that we are getting water, or it is underground, and even in underground it is because of rain. So we have to conserve, we have to save the rainwater, otherwise it will just wasted. So that is why we do rainwater harvesting. And even in agriculture we need to save water. We have to spend water in agriculture, but in that way that it would not be wasted. We have to manage our canals in agriculture for agricultural purposes. We have to manage our canals for the minimized loss of water. We don't have to lose water. We don't have to do loss of water. We have to conserve waters. And sprinklers should be used in agriculture. Sprinklers should be used in fields, farmlands for growing crops. So there are many ways to conserve water. And even in your house, in your home, you can save water by many ways. So we have to conserve water. We have to save water, because you know that it's a very important source. So our next topic is natural vegetation and wildlife. So natural vegetation and wildlife. Natural vegetation and wildlife, as you know that they are also important resources, and natural vegetation and wildlife exist only in biosphere. Biosphere, as you know that this is a narrow zone of lithosphere, hydrosphere and atmosphere, and where only the natural vegetation and wildlife exist. And now between natural vegetation, between plants and animals, there is a system where you know that all plants plants and animals are dependent on each other for their survival, and this life supporting system is what we call ecosystem. So ecosystem, there is biosphere where they exist, and now there is ecosystem between natural vegetation, between plants and animals. So as you know that natural vegetation, plants, trees are very important to us. You know that plants provide us with timbers, wax. You know that the paper that is very important for your studies are also made for plants. From plants, you know that paper is made, and there are so many uses of plants, like they give shelter to the animals. You know that if we cut trees, then there would not be any shelter for animals as well. Now plants also act as shelter beds. We have studied that what are shelter beds, and plants are also important to bind soil, to bind land, for our agriculture. That is very important to grow crops. So plants provide us with many things. They are very useful to us. And next is wildlife. Animals are also important to us. So as you know that animals provide us with hides, skin, meat, milk, honey. You know that honeybees provide us with honey, and you know that there are many, and they also act as decomposers. Birds also act as decomposers. You might have heard about vulture. Vulture is also one of the decomposers. That is, it fed on the dead stock livelihood, dead stock animal or insect, and it fed on it and acts as a natural decomposer. And there are many birds that act as decomposers. They fed on insects and act as decomposers. So both natural vegetation and wildlife are very important resources. We need them. You know that plants and animals both are also very useful. If there are furniture in your house that are made from wood, then where they do come from? They come from plants, trees. So you know that there is a very urgent need to save them, to conserve our natural vegetation and our wildlife resources. So our next topic is distribution of natural vegetation. Distribution of natural vegetation. So if we talk about natural vegetation, what comes in natural vegetation? Natural vegetation like plants, trees, crops, these are all natural vegetation, that is nature's given. Now if we talk about natural vegetation, there can be 4 types of vegetation, that are forests, grasslands, scrubs and tundra regions. So forests, you know that in many areas there is a heavy rainfall and very big trees grow, and that is what we call forest. You know that in forest there is a very high temperature, there is a very high source of moisture, there would be very high moisture. So forest is a place where there are big trees and they grow because of heavy rainfall, and as the moisture decreases there would be grasses, not trees, there would be small trees, very short trees or grasses. So that is what we call grasslands, that is lands of grass, because there is a decreased moisture, there is a less moisture than forest, there would be less rainfall than forest, so then there would be less trees, there would be short trees than forest. Now in very dry regions where there is no rainfall, there grows the scrubs, the thorny shrubs or scrubs, and that is what we call scrubs. You know that, like we can call about deserts, hot deserts, there are also a type of scrubs because there only grows cactus or any oasis. So these are scrubs. And last is tundra regions. Tundra regions are regions where only there are mosses and lichens. So these are 4 types of vegetation. So there are distribution of vegetation, natural vegetation as well, and that are forest, grasslands, scrubs and tundra regions. Now if we talk about forest can also be divided. You know that forest can be divided into evergreen and deciduous. Evergreen forests that remain always green, that is, they do not shed their leaves even in any season, even in particular or in any season of the year. You know that there is very high rainfall, then they don't have to shed their leaves. And deciduous forests are those, deciduous trees or forests are those forests that shed their leaves in a particular season of the year. And even in evergreen forest and deciduous forest, there are types like if they are in tropical regions, if they are in Antarctic regions, that depends on their regions where they are growing. So you might have studied about forest in the last class of your book. So that is what we call the differentiation, the distribution of natural vegetation. We have distributed. You know that in whole world, in many countries, in all countries of the world, there is uneven distribution of the forest, of the natural vegetation. In some areas there is no vegetation. There is almost, I would not say whole, there is almost, because in any country there would be a little bit vegetation, but you know that in many areas of the world there is very less vegetation, and in many areas of the world there is very high vegetation. So there is uneven distribution of natural vegetation. So next and last topic of this chapter is conservation of natural vegetation and wildlife. Conservation of natural vegetation and wildlife. So as you know that natural vegetation and wildlife resources are very important resources, but due to many factors, human factors or natural factors, they have been, many animals are on the verge of extinction or have become vulnerable, or you can say that endangered species. Now both human factors and natural factors like deforestation, overgrazing, overuse of chemical pesticides, tsunami, landslides, these are, and constructional activities, forest fires, these are some of the factors that affect our natural vegetation, wildlife resources. So as you know that forest fire, nowadays forest fires have become a very important, crucial thing to have learnt about, because you know that forest fires are now becoming more and more common in many regions of the world. You know that in forests, due to either lightning or due to mistakes of people, carelessness of people, there have been many forest fires. For example, in California there have been so many forest fires. So forest fires are also one of the major threats to the wildlife resources or natural resources, natural vegetation. So you know that many animals have been verge on extinction or have become vulnerable species. Now we have to conserve them. We have to adopt methods to conserve them. Like we have to start campaigns like social forestry or Vano Mahotsava. Now we have to start them, and even at the little age, even at the young age, we have to teach children, kids of our country, because we know that if a person is learning it from a very young age, then it would become a moral value to his very old age. So for the kids, we have to show them different types of animals, uses of animals and plants. So now they would learn about them and they would conserve them, they would save them. And animals, you know that there have been always illegal trade in hides, skin, nails, horns, teeth of animals, and even the feathers of animals and birds. So you know that there have been many illegal trades, and now many countries have banned it. And in India there have been bannings on the killings of the animals that are lions, tigers, deers, great Indian bustards and peacocks. Now there is ban on these killings, on the killings of these animals, these some particular animals. And now you know that there have been so many animals that are on the verge of extinction. Now an international agreement has been made, an international organization has been established for these conservation of natural vegetation and wildlife resources, that is CITES, Convention on International Trade of Endangered Species of Wild Flora and Fauna. Now you know that there would be convention if there is any trade between countries in endangered species of wild flora and fauna. Now CITES list many of the animals, many types of animals, many species of animals to be protected from the illegal trading between countries. Now if we talk about the estimated value, then there would be 5,000 species of animals and around 28,000 species of birds. So these are all species. There are many species that have been protected by sites due to for the illegal trading between countries. You know that they have, from the history, they have been illegal, they have been killings of animals for their things, for their like hides, like skins, like teeth, and even feathers there have been. So in this chapter we have discussed about our resources. For some resources like land resources, water resources, natural vegetation and wildlife resources. Now we have to conserve them, because all these resources that we have studied in this chapter, that we have discussed about in this chapter, are on the verge, are vulnerable. You know that even if we talk about land, there is land degradation. Even if we talk about water, there is so much water pollution. And in natural vegetation and wildlife resources, you know that people are harming it, humans are harming it, natural factors are also harming it. So we have to conserve them, conserve these resources as much possible as we can, because if we don't conserve it, then in future there would be problems for you as well. And as I have said that we have to teach children, we have to teach kids, because you know that even any moral value that is given at a very young age, it would become a moral value to a very old age. So this is all about the chapter. I have discussed all topics and subtopics, and I'll be covering next chapters in further videos. So thank you very much.